I love horror movies. Growing up, I would impatiently wait for the weekend on holidays just so I could stay up for a few extra hours and watch horror movies with my parents. I think that's what shaped my love for the peculiar. I have always been fascinated by creepy and bizarre art that pushes boundaries to the extreme. Art that most people dismiss as too uncomfortable. Years passed and my love for horror stayed the same, except the usual jump scares started becoming too predictable. That's when I dove deeper into body horror. Body horror, also known as biological horror, isn't about triggering fear of death or the demonic. Rather, it explores our deep anxieties about the human form itself, what it means to inhabit flesh that can transform, decay, or betray us. This subgenre often features grotesque imagery of the human body being altered through mutations, metamorphoses, or eroticism. What makes body horror so compelling is how it uniquely triggers both fear and seduction simultaneously. What I've noticed, especially after recently watching Grafted and The Substance, which inspired this essay, is that most body horror films portray the natural female body and its functions as inherently monstrous. This stands in stark contrast to movies featuring men, which tend to explore bodily boundaries through external mutation or alteration, as seen in Tetsuo the Iron Man, The Thing, or The Fly. Male body horror typically requires something extraordinary to happen. A man must be infected, mutated, or transformed by outside forces. A woman's body, in contrast, is often presented as inherently horrific, simply by existing and functioning as nature intended. Ashley Nicole Limjoco states in her paper that deeply resonated with me, Demystifying the Female Body Through Body Horror, that it can be extremely fascinating to see something you know you probably shouldn't, and to find yourself wanting to look, enjoying, and craving even the things you know you probably shouldn't. This is what entices and draws so many to this subgenre. Body horror offers the spectator a ticket into the surreal, absurd, and grotesque world of the human body made abject. This paradoxical attraction explains why so many people, such as myself, are drawn to this genre. Today, we'll explore how the feminine has become synonymous with the monstrous through analysis of various films and media, including The Substance, Grafted, Helter Skelter, and American Mary. We'll also attempt to dissect the cultural and historical origins that have rendered the feminine form monstrous in our collective imagination. In life, just like in literature, everything has an opposite. Night and day, fire and water, predator and prey, man and woman. In a society built heavily on patriarchy, women are positioned as the opposite of men. By definition, an other. The female body is fundamentally different from the male. It's cyclical, transformative, and leaking, which in patriarchal frameworks renders it monstrous. This othering process has deep historical roots, particularly within religious traditions. Throughout history, women have been simultaneously put on a pedestal and controlled. The moment a girl is born, her life's path often gets predetermined. A few centuries ago, this would kinda be the best case scenario. The worst being the girl getting buried alive and her mother executed for simply birthing a female child, especially as a firstborn. A practice notoriously common in pre-Islamic Arabian Peninsula. A baby girl was considered a sign of shame because what value was there in a girl beyond being a procreation machine? She wouldn't pass on the family name and would merely transition from her father's home to her husband's. Bulgarian-French philosopher and psychoanalyst Julia Kristeva and Australian feminist theorist Barbara Creed both explore the concepts of otherness and abjection in relation to the female body. Creed, inspired by Freud and Kristeva, introduced the concept of the monstrous feminine in her 1993 book of the same name. Rather than seeing the feminine as inherently monstrous, she argues that it is constructed as such within patriarchal discourse. What's particularly insightful about Creed's analysis is how she reveals that horror's portrayal of monstrous femininity tells us far more about male desires and fears than about feminine desire itself. She focuses her analysis on the mother as the ultimate abject figure in horror, examining how maternal bodies particularly trouble patriarchal boundaries. Meanwhile, Kristeva introduces the concepts of other and otherness, frequently connecting them to motherhood. She describes motherhood as a physically complex state where the mother experiences the child as both self and other. This creates an inherently unstable relationship that can oscillate between exaltation and aggression, the classic "I love him" and "I hate him" ambivalence that characterizes many maternal experiences. What makes Kristeva's theory so powerful is her recognition that this passionate ambivalence actually enables the mother to form a genuine bond with the other, allowing her to negotiate the complex and sometimes destructive emotions underlying all human relationships. The word other in English defines something different or opposite. Women, by social construction, are positioned as opposite to men, and humans instinctively remain wary of the unfamiliar. Men don't menstruate or experience the same extreme bodily changes. Women do. Therefore, within this framework, a woman becomes an other, a monster. This dynamic appears in many David Cronenberg films. The Canadian director, who frequently employs body horror, often traces the human body's descent into monstrosity and the unknown, typically by having women undergo a destructive sexual transformation while men watch, horrified yet aroused. In many religions, young girls are taught from a very young age about the importance of chastity and obedience. First, a girl must obey her parents. Then, once she reaches puberty, her husband. These dynamics are beautifully portrayed in Valerie and Her Week of Wonders, a film that puts heavy focus on purity and religion, frequently depicting Valerie as obedient to both the people around her and the church. When Valerie first menstruates, this transition is symbolically depicted with her dripping blood on a daisy, a flower famous for representing innocence. When she tells her grandmother Elsa that she is no longer a child, her grandmother's reaction is rather indifferent. When Valerie shows excitement about the actors arriving in town, Elsa responds by suggesting she should be more interested in the missionaries instead. At the church, Valerie is surrounded by other young girls as the constable, a monstrous-looking man, gives a speech about how ripe they are and the importance of maintaining their purity before bestowing his blessings. The portrayal of women as beings who need guidance through religious instruction may have roots in interpretations of religious texts. Notably in Christianity, the book of Genesis presents two accounts of creation. Genesis 1 verse 27 describes God creating both man and woman in the divine image simultaneously. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. Genesis 2 verse 22, however, presents a different narrative where woman is formed from man's rib, suggesting a derivative rather than equal origin. These different accounts have influenced theological perspective on women's nature and purpose. In Jewish folklore, rather than canonical religious texts, Lilith embodies what we might describe as the monstrous feminine. According to these traditions, Lilith was Adam's first wife who refused to be subservient. When she chose freedom and equality over submission, she fell from grace and became associated with demons and darkness. Later religious interpretations regarded her as demonic and satanic, a cautionary tale about women who embrace their autonomy. Just like in the story of Lilith, a woman embracing her womanhood has historically been regarded as evil and demonic. Juan Luis Pibes, a prominent Spanish humanist philosopher of the 16th century who wrote extensively on female education and conduct, encapsulates this perspective. He perceived virginity as a woman's greatest treasure, writing that the maid herself hath within her a treasure without comparison, that is the pureness of body and mind. In his view, purity and chastity weren't the only conditions for a good godly woman. Modesty in appearance was equally crucial. Pibes argued that a woman should not use cosmetics to enhance her beauty because by doing so, she was altering God's image and thus committing a grave sin. To become an other to oneself requires experiencing abjection. In the films we'll analyze, we'll observe a clear pattern of women transforming into an other before becoming a monster. It is through abjection that women can reclaim control of their narratives, breaking free from patriarchal expectations by destroying those expectations themselves. In these films, the women don't merely become monsters to society, but primarily to themselves, often culminating in what Kristeva describes as the ultimate form of abjection, a corpse, a hollow shell of their former selves. In her 1980 book, Powers of Horror, an essay on abjection, Kristeva defines abjection as a threat where the person is confronted by the sheer experience of their corporeal reality. In other words, abjection is the state of awareness of one's body and its capabilities, an attempt to shore up the symbolic order by constructing the feminine as an imaginary other, which must be repressed and controlled in order to protect the social order. Kristeva describes it as immoral, sinister, scheming, and shady, a terror that dissembles, a hatred that smiles, a passion that uses the body for barter instead of inflaming it, a debtor who sells you up, a friend who stabs you. She clarifies that abjection is not simply uncleanliness or poor health, but what disturbs identity, system, and order, what does not respect borders, positions, rules, the in-between, the ambiguous, the composite, the traitor, the liar, the criminal with a good conscience, the shameless the killer who claims he is a savior. Any crime because it draws attention to the fragility of the law is abject. But premeditated crime, cunning murder, hypocritical revenge are even more so because they heighten the display of such fragility. Pibes pushed his ideas further, claiming that when a woman uses jewelry for beautification, it's even worse because precious metals make her one of Saitana's officers. His argument was that dressing beautifully isn't for the woman herself, but is done so to cause jealousy among other women and lustful excitement in men, all considered pure evil, heavily supporting the arguments of alpha male podcasters. Arousing sinful thoughts represented the ultimate danger to women who wished to maintain their purity until marriage. These views were common among religious thinkers. Tertullian, known as the father of Latin Christianity, similarly warned against women enhancing their appearance, stating that, to them, I suppose, the plastic skill of God is displeasing, and that the pageantry of fictitious and elaborate beauty be rejected by you. He went further to encourage women to hide even their natural beauty because it could draw unholy attention from men. Like Pibes, Tertullian argued that a woman who alters her appearance with makeup would not only attract unworthy men, but would also become monstrous, effectively laying violent hand on God himself. So don't you even dare put on that clear lip balm you're carrying with you right now, you monstrous sinful woman. Ashley Nicole Limjoco poetically describes her female body as a puppet. I bled for the first time when I was 11. Since then, my female body has been meek prey for vultures. My female body has cried, ached, and leaked. She further characterizes her body as a labyrinthine tunnel, dark, warm, sticky, purple, and erotic. As a woman, my relationship with my body is complicated. It's a constant negotiation between my consciousness and physicality. The sudden, dramatic changes that occur during adolescence, followed by never-ending bodily transformations, cellulite, stretch marks, wrinkles, fine lines, create a profound disconnect. One day, you'll look in the mirror and feel foreign in your own body. Your reflection becomes something abject. Circling back to Valerie, she gets tied to a cross in the town square after the priest Gracian accuses her of tempting me to sin, wicked girl. This after she escaped his uninvited attempt to forcibly deflower her. Both Bibis and Tertullian agreed that virtue was the only beauty principle a woman should follow. Bibis stated that even after marriage, if the husband asked his wife to alter her natural image, she must fulfill his wishes, but not before reminding him how painful it was for her to do such a thing and receive attention contrary to her moral convictions. The true garnishing and ornaments of wives was chastity, and not clothing. When Valerie was tied to the pole, she laughed and stuck out her tongue as the priest called her a witch. It's striking how often a woman who took care of her appearance was regarded as a witch who enticed and seduced men, making them think unholy thoughts. A witch represented a threat. She could cast spells on men, transform them into animals, and hold them captive. This connection between demonic women and animality appears throughout folklore, with figures like Lilith often depicted as shapeshifters who could transform into animals. Growing up, regardless of which part of the world you're from, you've likely encountered stories and legends portraying women as monsters. La Llorona, the slit-mouthed woman, and countless others exemplify this trope. Evil women who harm men and children. Yet upon deeper analysis with an objective perspective, you notice how these women were often themselves victims. La Llorona, for instance, in the version I learned about in my country, was simply a woman who defended herself against soldiers attempting to take advantage of her. This pattern of teaching women and girls to do as they're told persists across cultures. Many traditions and laws worldwide still enable the degradation of women and girls for male entertainment. In The Love Witch, witch teachers Barbara and Gahan deliver a monologue that brilliantly captures this historical fear of female sexuality.
All witches need to figure out where their power lies, and we feel that a woman's greatest power lies in her sexuality. We don't view this power as satanic or anti-feminist, but as a celebration of woman as a natural creature, earthly body, a spiritual essence, and a womb.
The whole history of witchcraft is interwoven with the fear of female sexuality. They burned us at the stake because they feared the erotic feelings we elicited in them. Later, they used marriage to hold us in bondage and made us into servants, whores, and fantasy dolls, never asking us what we wanted.
They teach us that a normative human being is a hyper-rationalist stoic male, and that women's emotions and intuitions are illnesses that need to be cured. We believe men and women are different, and that true equality lies in that difference.
We strive for male-female polarity and to regain our primal power as goddesses. We need to teach men how to love us using ways they can understand.
So, goddesses, use perfume, wear high heels and makeup, learn to dress your hair in attractive ways, display flesh artfully, and know what to conceal. Be a mother and a lover. Stand your ground, but always let the man feel like a man.
What I find most fascinating is the dualistic approach to reclaim power that the witches advocate, embracing feminine power while strategically working within patriarchal expectations to ultimately subvert them. This tension between accommodation and rebellion perfectly encapsulates the complex position of women as both subject to and resistant against their construction as other. The perception of women as other has deep historical roots. Being born female is already challenging enough, but being a woman of color represents an entirely different level of otherness. The father of gynecology, J. Marion Sims, began his practice by abusing and experimenting on enslaved African women, Anarsha, Lucy, and Betsy, performing over 30 surgeries without anesthesia. Even in nature, this otherness manifests. Many female species handle labor, reproduction, and survival tasks that can appear monstrous by human Sanders. Female insects that consume or kill males for survival being just one example among many. The depiction of the female body as simultaneously demonic and angelic in religious tradition creates a profound contradiction, one that continues to reverberate in our analysis of mother and woman figures in the horror genre, where the feminine is constructed and positioned as abject, a threat to the patriarchal order that must be contained or destroyed. Having introduced the relevant concepts that constitute the foundation of our analysis, I'd like to begin by briefly introducing the films I've selected and the reasoning behind my choices. In the following sections, I'll be examining love, beauty, art, motherhood, and womanhood in general, exploring their relationships to biological horror. Of course, there's a plethora of movies and stories to choose from, and I watched way too many before deciding on these particular works. Typically, in academic papers I've read, the body horror being analyzed is overt and confrontational, designed to creep you out and evoke disgust and discomfort. After all, the word horror derives from Latin and means to stand on end or bristle, describing a physiological state of agitation. Movies like May, Carrie, and Rosemary's Baby are staple examples when discussing this topic. Nevertheless, I wanted to delve into more recent films where the body horror isn't necessarily the most visually disturbing element. Rather, it's the mental state and downward spiral these women experience that truly terrifies, especially from my perspective as a woman. I'll briefly introduce the storyline of each film and attempt to connect them to the themes I mentioned previously, without revealing too much. In fact, I would encourage you to watch these movies when you have time because the experience is truly remarkable. Helter Skelter addresses multiple important subjects simultaneously, the title itself meaning absolute chaos. The primary focus is Limjoco and her fall from grace. She's the current it girl, a famous model who is beautiful, young, and successful, the embodiment of what many aspire to be. However, Limjoco harbors a secret. She's undergone procedures at a clinic currently under investigation for tax evasion and organ trafficking. This beauty clinic uses trafficked organs for cosmetic procedures, but these organs eventually deteriorate, requiring clients to continually return for suppressive medication to maintain their appearance. Limjoco's body begins to disintegrate, and consequently, so does her life. She develops dark bruises and panics, knowing that if her beauty fades, she'll be discarded and forgotten. When her manager, Mama, introduces her newest talent, Kozue, a younger, beautiful girl, Limjoco unravels, consumed by jealousy, despair, and hopelessness. Helter Skelter perfectly exemplifies how obsession, particularly with external beauty, can transform women into monstrous versions of themselves. The substance centers on Elizabeth Sparkle, a famous woman suddenly deemed too old to be desirable on television. Effectively fired, she meets a young male nurse who introduces her to the substance following an accident. This experimental treatment allows her to create two versions of herself, one superior to the other. She partakes in it, and we meet Sue, a younger, more attractive version of Elizabeth who auditions for and secures Elizabeth's former television position. As Sue becomes increasingly successful, she grows greedier, and the boundary between Sue and Elizabeth blurs until they reach mutual destruction. Grafted follows scholarship student Wei, who relocates to New Zealand from China for education. Wei's late father was a scientist researching skin grafting to heal both the scar on his face and on Wei's neck, a feature that has always made her self-conscious and feel ugly. Wei becomes a laboratory assistant to her professor, Paul Featherstone, seeing this as an opportunity to complete her father's research. Paul takes interest in her work and hastily emails colleagues about it, claiming it as his own, which definitely never happens in real life. Wei eventually succeeds in perfecting the formula by adding extract from a corpse flower and injecting it into skin. Ironic. After a confrontation with her cousin Angela turns deadly, Wei attempts to fix fix the situation by doing the only logical thing, grafting Angela's face onto her own. American Mary centers on Mary Mason, a medical student aspiring to become a surgeon who struggles to pay her tuition. Through unexpected circumstances involving her applying for a part-time job at a club only for her to end up reshaping someone's organs, she becomes involved with the body modification community through Beatrice, a dancer at said club and a Betty Boop looking lady with a very high-pitched cartoonish voice, performing procedures for people who wish to transform their bodies in ways conventional surgeons refuse to do. We meet Ruby, a Barbie-like woman who desires to look exactly like a doll, specifically requesting that her genitals be sealed and removed because she doesn't want to be sexualized. A doll can be naked and never feel shy or sexualized or degraded. That's what I want, she explains. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, a saying we've heard countless times. Beauty is often inextricably tied to femininity. Indeed, it constitutes a fundamental aspect of what defines the feminine as feminine. While natural beauty is frequently celebrated, enhanced beauty, as we've established, is often linked to evil and monstrosity because it's considered deceptive. A woman must be beautiful to be desired, voluptuous, attractive, an object of lust. However, that's all she's permitted to be, because a good woman, one worthy of genuine love and marriage, must simultaneously remain obedient and natural. There's a profound irony in how women are expected to embody contradictory ideals simultaneously. A good woman must be pure, yet somehow know how to please her husband in ways that require experience. When it comes to beauty standards, women are placed on a pedestal with impossible expectations. A man can go bald, develop wrinkles, grow old, and still be considered desirable. We have a saying in my country that says that the only flaw a man can have is his pockets. As long as a man can financially provide, he is good enough and worthy. A woman, on the other hand, well, growing and maturing becomes her greatest transgression. Engrafted, Wei, despite being extremely intelligent and beautiful in spite of her scar, still feels self-conscious and experiences an overwhelming desire to change herself. This stems from constantly seeing flawless women on billboards and throughout media, creating the impression that there must be something wrong with her, that she must transform. Lilico and Elizabeth in Helter Skelter and The Substance, respectively, standing on the other side, find themselves in similar positions. Both are public figures whose career successes depends heavily on their desirability. Lilico, the moment she discovers bruises on her body, realizes she can never return to her former state. Having lost contact with her family, abandoned by her fiancé and replaced by a younger woman, she understands she will no longer be seen and therefore, in a sense, ceases to exist. Elizabeth, despite being beautiful and successful, has internalized society's perceptions so deeply that she believes herself worthless simply because she's aged. Elizabeth has committed what society deems the greatest crime a woman can commit. She grew old. Now deemed undesirable, even the career she worked tirelessly to build is summarily taken from her. In research conducted by Laura Hurd Clarke and Alexandra Korotchenko, titled Doing Beauty, Women, Asian, and Identity, the authors explore how old age becomes synonymous with social invisibility for women. They argue that women are the victims of false consciousness, and that they are perceived to effectively submit to patriarchal beauty requirements and their social objectification through their self-defeating engagement in beauty work and their unquestioning acceptance of feminine beauty ideals, against which their own appearances are found sorely and increasingly wanton with age. In their study, they interviewed older women about their perceptions of their own beauty. Many participants stated that they find wrinkles ugly and unattractive, describing their faces as too shriveled and cracky. May, aged 89, confessed, "I should accept my wrinkles because it's normal, but I don't. because they're ugly. Half of the women maintained that being described as younger than their actual age is received as a compliment. In The Substance, Elizabeth occupies the precarious position of an Asian female public figure. One of the research participants, Ruth, age 71, commented on how she compares herself with celebrities to boost her self-esteem. I cut a picture of Helen Mirren out of the paper the other day. She looks terrible. She's got dreadful wrinkles in her face and she's only 61. So I thought, oh boy, my friends and I look so much better than that. Anne, age 71, recounted media's role in perpetuating Asia's beauty ideals. You take a look at someone on the almost plastic women on television and it infiltrates you. Every magazine you pick up, the flyers in the newspaper, there's just so much money in it that they're constantly bombarding you. Many women, despite a knowledge in media's impact on their perception of beauty, criticized others for cosmetic modification. June, age 86, stated, I think old women who have had surgical facelifts when they were younger look terrible when they get older because, well, look at Betty Davis. She looked like a monkey in her old age, and yet she was a beautiful woman. I think it catches up to you. Nevertheless, many participants also described using makeup simply because they enjoy it, while others admitted using it to conceal insecurities or to appear more content and happy. These women acknowledged that youth isn't eternal, but this recognition doesn't diminish their pursuit of it. Florence, age 85, commented, I have had laser resurfacing. I didn't see all that much difference, and I think, as I say, there comes a time when your skin can't take anymore. I'm interested in trying anything and everything to make me look younger, and I thought maybe the laser treatment might help, but I'm not too sure that it did. I think basically now, and I'm not being funny about it, basically, I'm old and I don't think anybody can do anything more for me, so there we are. I believe that as women, we're acutely aware of the capitalistic nature of the beauty industry, yet we still feel compelled to look beautiful, use these products, and make ourselves more attractive. In Helter Skelter, the detective investigating the clinic criticizes it for being capitalistic and feeding young women unrealistic standards, many of whom take their own lives after the bruises become permanent. His female assistant argues that beauty enhancement is, in a way, necessary because a woman can't go far with brains alone. It's a complicated relationship imposed particularly on women. The films Helter Skelter and The Substance powerfully demonstrate how the aging process for women becomes a form of body horror. In both films, the female body transforms against the protagonist's will, not through supernatural means, but through the natural process of aging that society has deemed monstrous. Elizabeth's desperate use of the substance to create Sue is a visceral metaphor for the extreme measures women take to remain visible in a society that refuses to see them once they age. Similarly, Lilico's deteriorating body, with its spreading bruises and decaying organs, represents the fragility of beauty and the terror of its inevitable loss. The horror in these films stems not from external threats, but from the realization that women's bodies themselves, in their natural state of aging, changing, and maturing, are categorized as abject by society. What makes these films particularly unsettling is how they expose the way women internalize this abjection, becoming monstrous to themselves before society even has a chance to label them as such. In American Mary, we see a different approach to beauty standards through the body modification community. The film reframes cosmetic procedures not as conforming to patriarchal expectations, but as a radical self-reclamation and bodily autonomy. Ruby's desire to be transformed into a sexless doll represents a complete rejection of the male gaze. bodies. Mary's surgical skills become a tool for liberation rather than oppression, allowing her clients to reshape their bodies according to their own internal identity rather than society's expectations. This presents a fascinating counterpoint to the destructive beauty pursuit seen in Helter Skelter and The Substance. When a woman embraces her femininity and willingly undergoes cosmetic changes, men often project their own insecurities onto her, a manipulative tactic to force her back into submission. Yet all these films ultimately explore how women might reclaim control of their narratives through abjection itself, by becoming monstrous on their own terms, whether through body modification like in American Mary, or through confronting their Asian selves as in The Substance. Women can potentially break free from patriarchal expectations. The transformation of the female body becomes a site of both destruction and potential liberation. In Grafted, Wei's desperate act of grafting her cousin's face onto her own represents the extreme endpoint of beauty standards internalized to the point of violence. Yet even this horrific act stems from Wei's desire to control her own appearance and complete her father's work. A twisted form of agency in a world that has consistently told her she is ugly. Society has developed a monstrous relationship with women's bodies, simultaneously demanding beauty while condemning the pursuit of it, glorifying youth while rendering the natural aging process abject. These films expose this contradiction by showing us women who, in their desperate attempts to meet impossible standards, transform into versions of themselves they can no longer recognize. The true horror lies not in the monstrous transformations themselves, but in the recognition that society has created conditions where such transformations feel necessary for survival. While the previous discussion established how society's beauty standards render women's natural aging process as a form of body horror, this chapter examines how body modification can serve as both artistic expression and rebellion against these very standards. The films analyzed previously reveal women becoming monstrous through their desperate attempts to meet impossible beauty standards, but American Mary offers a counter-narrative where monstrosity becomes the deliberate, empowering choice. Body horror in art is no foreign concept. Masters like Francisco Goya, H.P. Lovecraft, and countless others have delved into using body horror through surrealism and exploration of both the unknown and familiar. Goya's work, for instance, doesn't shy away from the bloody and abnormal, often portraying animals and humans in somewhat ritualistic gatherings reminiscent of religious ceremonies. After all, what is art if not something that evokes powerful emotions in the viewer or reader? Among the most influential body horror artists stands H.R. Giger, primarily known for his groundbreaking work in the Alien franchise and his Necronomicon art. Giger's creations exist at the intersection of science fiction with powerful undertones of religion and femininity. Giger's fascination lay in exploring the merger between machinery and human form, creating biomechanical landscapes that blur the boundaries between organic and synthetic. Many of Giger's or Goya's works have been described as satanic, simply because of how foreign, how abject, and therefore how monstrous they appear to conventional sensibilities. Nevertheless, that perception remains innately tied to what we collectively consider human and acceptable. When internet artists began recreating biblically accurate angels with their multiple wings, countless eyes, and inhuman geometries, many viewers found them deeply uncanny, yet they couldn't label them satanic because, well, they're angels. Though, had these same forms appeared as random body horror art, that word would have been readily applied and the art shunned. Body modification itself can be considered a form of body horror realized in flesh rather than canvas. It represents an extreme form of plastic surgery where individuals choose to modify their bodies beyond conventional aesthetics. This perspective provides a crucial lens for understanding American Mary, which subverts these typical body horror conventions. Unlike standard genre entries where bodily abjection itself generates fear, American Mary locates horror in societal and patriarchal perceptions of the protagonist and her clients. During a pivotal montage showing Mary photographing her body modification surgeries for her blog, she increasingly celebrates her clients' choices, growing more comfortable with and affirming of their practices.
This is about you and how you can best express yourself to the world. There are numerous procedures outlined here, but please don't feel limited to them. The most important thing is that you're happy and comfortable with yourself. I know you may have come up against some harsh criticisms and judgments in the past, but you can feel confident that you're free of all such notions here. I can assure you that you'll receive your procedure in a safe and supportive environment, and at a reasonable cost. It is difficult to put a price on feeling complete, though, isn't it?
Mary's character arc takes her from initial horror at body modification to finding profound purpose in helping people achieve self-defined beauty standards. A journey that challenges viewers to question their own preconceptions about bodily autonomy and aesthetic norms. Unlike Limjoco in Helter Skelter or Elizabeth in The Substance, whose modifications aim to achieve society's impossible standard, Mary's clients seek to break free entirely from these expectations. French performance artist Allan provides a real-world parallel to Mary's fictional practice. Allan stands as one of the most renowned figures using body modification as art, her body literally becoming her canvas. Her most celebrated work, The Reincarnation of Saint Orlan, consists of a series of documented surgical procedures where she aimed to incorporate features from famous paintings such as the Mona Lisa into her own face and body. Orlan's journey into surgical documentation began after undergoing emergency surgery following an ectopic pregnancy in 1978. She expressed that her motivation stemmed from genuine curiosity about what was happening to her body during medical procedures. From 1990 onward, Orlan repeatedly went under the knife for various operations, documenting procedures ranging from temple silicone implants to more extensive surgeries, sometimes without anesthesia, remaining fully conscious while animating these surgical performances by reciting philosophical texts. These silicone implants referenced historical beauty standards where facial protuberances were once considered attractive. Through this process, Orlan occupied the dual role of both viewer and subject. When questioned whether her goal through these surgeries was to enhance her beauty, Orlan emphatically responded, "No, my goal was to be different, strong, to sculpt my own body, to reinvent the self. It's all about being different and creating a clash with society because of that. I try to use surgery not to better myself or become a younger version of myself, but to work on the concepts of image and surgery the other way around. I was the first artist to do it." Addressing whether she aimed to transform beauty ideals, she reflected, "I am not sure I can change such a thing, but I can produce images that are different from those we find in comics, video games, magazines, and TV shows. There are other ways to think about one's body and one's beauty. If you were to describe me without anyone being able to see me, they would think I am a monster, that I am not but if they see me, that could perhaps change." Orlan's work brilliantly highlights culturally specific concepts of beauty, directly challenging Western assumptions about the universality or superiority of its beauty standards. She celebrates diverse beauty ideals and confronts Western notions by embracing an otherness she deliberately creates. A few generations ago, in the southwest of France, this kind of practice was still ongoing. Strabism was created by placing a ball of clay or a shell at the top of the nose in between the baby's eyes. This distortion was considered beautiful and thus contrasts with today's standards of beauty since we detest strabism now and try to correct it. Nonetheless, those past ideas about beauty were also technical productions of bodies responding to ideological, often patriarchal codes. The beauty that I eventually create is on the fringe of past and present codes. It inhabits the margins. Otherness, I reinvent myself to maintain myself as other. Beyond strabism, numerous cultures and ethnic groups still practice body modification to achieve their cultural ideals of beauty, from elongated necks used in neck rings in parts of Southeast Asia, to intricate scarification in certain African communities, to historical practices like foot binding in China and lip plates in various indigenous traditions worldwide. This context illuminates the revolutionary nature of American Mary as a body horror film. While the films previously mentioned portray beauty standards as a source of horror that transforms women into monsters against their will, American Mary presents body modification as a form of reclamation. Mary's clients choose their transformations deliberately, using body modification to reject society's narrow definitions of beauty and femininity. Ruby's desire to become doll-like represents not a capitulation to male fantasy, but a radical assertion of control over her own body and sexuality. The true horror in American Mary lies not in the modified bodies themselves, which the film presents with empathy and even beauty, but in society's reaction to them. The film inverts traditional body horror tropes by suggesting that the real monstrosity lies in a culture that denies women's sovereignty over their own bodies. In this way, American Mary completes a circle with the other films discussed. While Helter Skelter, The Substance, and Grafted show women becoming monstrous through their desperate attempts to conform to beauty standards, American Mary reveals how deliberate chosen monstrosity can become a powerful form of resistance. Through body modification, both Orlan and Mary's clients transform the abject into art, reclaiming agency in a world that would otherwise render them invisible or constrain them within narrow definitions of acceptable femininity. Their monstrous bodies become not sources of horror, but canvases for self-expression, challenging viewers to reconsider their own preconceptions about beauty, art, and bodily autonomy. While our exploration of beauty standards and body modification has revealed how women's physical appearance can render them monstrous in society's eyes, another dimension of female monstrosity emerges through expectations surrounding love and marriage. Just as the body becomes a site of horror through aging or deliberate modification, a woman's relationship to love, whether through its absence, rejection, or transformation, can similarly render her abject in society's perception. A woman being denied or denying love herself is another thing that can make her monstrous. Marriage has, for years, been the natural transition from girlhood to womanhood. Parents would give their daughters for marriage to provide a certain level of security, mainly financial, in the form of a husband. However, marriage in such circumstances functions as a transaction. A woman is offered to a man in exchange for tangible and monetary assets. In these arrangements, women are often stripped of agency, surname, and identity, expected only to please their husbands and fulfill wifely duties without questioning. This expectation of female submission within marriage creates another paradox similar to beauty standards. Just as women must be beautiful but not artificially so, they must be desirable but not overtly sexual, dedicated wives but not devoid of independence. When women fail to navigate these contradictions, or worse, reject them entirely, they risk becoming monstrous in society's eyes. In Valerie and Her Week of Wonders, when Hedvika, a young woman and Valerie's friend, gets married off to a much older man, Valerie feels pity for her, only to be shushed by her grandmother because Hedvika is marrying a rich landowner. She'll be known as his wife. What an honor, she should be happy. On her wedding day, the dinner table is a mess. Red wine dripping on dying daisies, a symbol of Hedvika's end of innocence. When her husband announces it's time, she breaks down crying, lamenting that all her dreams have come to nothing, before accepting her fate. After consummation, he graciously comments about the lack of blood, and when Hedvika cries again, he tells her to stop because she looks old when she does. The absolute horror he has to face. What makes this portrayal of marriage particularly disturbing is how it suggests that women don't even feel connected to their bodies anymore. They become mere vessels for their husband's pleasure and obedience, rendering them abject. The film further complicates this view of marriage through Elsa, Valerie's grandmother, who, despite having aged and portraying a mother figure who appears reserved and sure of herself, still desperately seeks love and youth. In a revealing scene, Valerie is forced to spy on her grandmother through a hole in the wall, where she witnesses Elsa being degraded and whipped by the priest Gracian as she begs for his love. Elsa believes she will only receive love if she regains her youth, eventually sucking out Hedvika's youth Edward Cullen style on her wedding day to become younger herself. This vampire motive connects directly to our earlier discussion of beauty standards. Women literally consuming other women's youth to remain valuable in a patriarchal system. In the substance, Elizabeth feels she's aged beyond romantic possibility, having focused too much on her career. When she calls an old classmate after leaving the hospital, she hesitates but becomes excited when he agrees to meet. She prepares carefully, but each glimpse of anything reminding her of Sue, the giant billboard outside her window really not helping at all, makes her doubt herself. Despite Sue being literally another version of Elizabeth, a vessel through which she relives her youth and career, Elizabeth feels inadequate. She repeatedly removes and reapplies her makeup before abandoning the date entirely. Both the substance and Valerie employ supernatural elements to literalize the horror of this competition, showing how women become monstrous in their desperate pursuit of youth and desirability. In Helter Skelter, Lilico is engaged to an heir named Takao, but discovers in a newspaper that he's actually getting married to a politician's daughter. In the manga, this revelation occurs while Lilico is naked in her dressing room, exposed and vulnerable. She quickly covers herself with a robe, attempting to restore her dignity. For Lilico, marriage represents escape from her modeling career, aligning with the good wife, wise mother ideal. She imagines a lovely prince to guarantee a secure and comfortable life. When she confronts Takao, he cruelly states, "Someone like me could never marry someone like you," while claiming he still loves her and suggesting they meet secretly during his honeymoon with the politician's daughter. How romantic. This moment marks Lilico's complete rejection from the normative role she saw. Here, the inevitability of abjection emerges not merely as a threat, but as a necessary condition for reinvention. Like her manager Mama, or Elizabeth, or Elsa, Lilico must confront the reality that she too will age, be discarded, and lose the youth she embodied. Her journey becomes one of confrontation rather than escape, accepting that abjection is not only inevitable but essential. This ideal of the good wife, wise mother is perhaps most dramatically subverted in Andrzej Żuławski's Possession. Set in Cold War Berlin, a city literally divided by walls that mirror the disintegrating marriage at the film's center, Possession follows Anna and Mark as their relationship collapses under mysterious circumstances. Anna rejects her role as wife and mother, becoming increasingly erratic and eventually engaging in a bizarre relationship with a crafty and tentacled creature she keeps in a decrepit apartment. The film's poster reminds me heavily of Medusa, the woman whose gaze turned men to stone, and Perseus's pride, her head serving as both a trophy and a weapon after he beheads her. This visual reference is fitting, as Anna similarly refuses to be constrained by societal expectations. After a few years of marriage with Mark, she becomes neglectful of their son and seeks excitement outside her marriage. Though Mark initially agrees to divorce, he becomes a complete wreck once Anna leaves and desperately tries to win her back. But Anna refuses to return to playing the good wife, wise mother role. Mark finds solace in Helen, their son's teacher, who appears to be Anna's physical double, yet represents everything Anna is not. Gentle, nurturing, and angelic, perpetually dressed in white. However, thanks to the valiant effort of my two remaining brain cells during this, I believe that Helen's appearance is simply Mark's projection of what he wishes Anna would be. Mark desires Anna, but wants her to change, to be more present, more compassionate, less monstrous. Anna conversely wants Mark to be more assertive, more confident, more monstrous. These contradictions all play a role in the transformation to the abject. Possession literalizes the horror of female rebellion against matrimonial constraints. Anna's relationship with Tentacle-san, which gradually transforms into her Mark's doppelganger, represents her rejection contradiction of sanctioned femininity. By choosing the abject, the monstrous, over her role as wife and mother, Anna becomes truly horrifying to society, yet also achieves a perverse kind of freedom. Now, while Possession shows the horror of rejecting matrimonial expectations, The Love Witch reveals the equally disturbing impossibility of fulfilling them. Elaine, the protagonist, desperately wants to be the perfect wife, but fails despite her best efforts. When she speaks with her friend Trish, well, I hope she considers her one. It's much easier than writing a whole other paragraph explaining the relationship dynamics of the movie. She insists that women should please their husbands more, yet later on, when she's breaking, she recounts how when married to Jerry, she couldn't satisfy him no matter how hard she tried.
I love you, Elaine. You know that, don't you? I love you very much. But you need to be more careful. Dinner was late 3 times this week, and the house is a total pigsty. Do you know that I found an old hot dog under the bed this morning? And why don't you ever brush your hair? You need to take better care of yourself and of the house. I'm embarrassed to have people over. I've been really patient up until now, but you need to step up your game.
Only when she becomes thinner does Jerry compliment her, echoing the beauty standards discussed earlier. This pattern traces back to Elaine's childhood, as she remembers her father telling her exactly what every young girl needs to hear.
I have a crazy bitch for a daughter. What? You're not crazy. Well, if you're not crazy, then you're stupid. Which is it? Are you crazy or are you stupid? And you could lose a few pounds. You're looking a little fatty.
Driven by these experiences, Elaine resorts to casting love spells on men, yet remains perpetually unsatisfied. When they work a little too well and become obsessed with her, she repeatedly finds herself trapped in a cycle of trying to please men, doing everything they desire, but never satisfying herself, leading her to literally destroy her lovers by transforming them into names on death certificates to escape this pattern. When Elaine finally meets Griff, a detective investigating one of her previous lover's deaths, she believes she's found her ideal match. During a mock wedding ceremony arranged by her whimsical witch friends in a forest, their exchange perfectly illustrates the fundamental disconnect between how men and women perceive love and relationships.
I'm not in love. It's not that I don't have sentiment, it's just that love is soft. I need guts in this business. I've seen guys get shot to death because they fell in love and got soft inside. I want an heir someday, and then I would need to have a wife. But love is something else. A man can get destroyed by things like that. It's like he's not even a man anymore. I never want to get that way.
When you really love him, it's like fireworks, and nothing else matters. You love all the little quirks about him, the way he slurps his cereal, the way his mouth is a little crooked. Those details about him become your whole life. Something inside you opens up like a flower, and you realize that you have more love to give than you ever thought was possible. Because the more you know him, the more you love him.
The more you get to know a woman, the less you can feel about her. At first, she's this incredible object of mystery who fulfills all your wildest fantasies. Then she starts to reveal little flaws. And after a while, it just gets pretty hard to care. Feminine ideal only exists in a man's mind. No woman could ever fulfill it. And sometimes, when she tries to love you more, give you more, you feel like you're suffocating. The most awful feeling.
This exchange, occurring during their mock wedding celebration against a backdrop of a seemingly happy couple, perfectly captures the contradiction at the heart of heterosexual relationships in a patriarchal society. Women seeking authentic connection find themselves trapped between impossible ideals and the abject reality of Asian bodies, while men pursue fantasies that no actual woman could ever satisfy. This creates a cycle of mutual disappointment that transforms both parties into monstrous versions of themselves. Looking across these films, we see two paths to female monstrosity within the realm of love and marriage. The first is the refusal to comply with matrimonial expectations, and the second is a desperate attempt to fulfill these expectations despite their impossibility. These paths mirror the approaches to beauty standards we saw earlier. Women can either reject beauty norms entirely or try desperately to conform to them. Before I end this chapter, I wanted to note that just as body modification can be both oppressive and liberating depending on agency and intent, marriage similarly contains this duality. When a woman enters marriage freely, it can be a source of fulfillment, as shown in one of my favorite movies, La Pata Ladies. But when marriage is forced upon women or becomes a site of erasure, it becomes another form of body horror, the gradual dissolution of self in service to another's desires. The true horror in these films isn't marriage itself, but the patriarchal structures that render women's desires secondary, that demand conformity to impossible standards, and that punish deviation with social ostracism or worse, whether through the literal monstrosity of Anna's tentacled lover in Possession, or the psychological monstrosity of Elaine's murderous witchcraft in The Love Witch. These films illustrate how the institution of marriage, when divorced from mutual respect and agency, can transform women into something society deems monstrous, either through their rebellion against it or their self-destruction in service to it. Becoming a mother is the ultimate form of femininity. The woman's body physically reshapes itself to introduce new life, growing, stretching, and ejecting fluids constantly. Following our earlier definitions of abjection, this makes the mother, as Barbara Creed puts it, the most disgusting of all abject horror creatures. A woman is not only an other in terms of her genetics and body, but she can procreate through giving birth, which a man cannot. Julia Kristeva states in Powers of Horror, an essay on abjection, "Fear of the uncontrollable generative mother repels me from the body. I give up cannibalism because abjection of the mother leads me towards respect for the body of the other, my fellow man, my brother." A mother is abject not only when her body transforms into an other. Hormones fluctuate during pregnancy, often causing intense emotional shifts, including depression. A woman fails to understand her own body as what was once hers has been altered and is consuming her to grow and protect the new life. This complete detachment from her pregnant body renders it thoroughly abject. Barbara Creed introduces the concepts of the archaic mother in the monstrous feminine, incorporating it along supernatural entities like vampires and witches. Rooted in psychoanalytic theory, the archaic mother appears in Freudian philosophy as both first nourisher and first seducer, intensifying her disturbing presence. This dual embodiment of maternal and carnal qualities complicates female characters, creating cognitive dissonance for audiences. A woman remains inherently tied to overt femininity markers and cannot escape the horror associated with her female body. Kristeva also connects the fear the archaic mother evokes to her generative power. It is this power, a dreaded one, that patrilineal filiation has the burden of subduing. The maternal role permeates all the films we've discussed. Elizabeth plays mother to Sue, Elsa to Valerie. In American Mary, while the mother isn't prominent, we glimpse Mary's connection with her nana. When Mary becomes consumed by her black market surgery business and ignores her nana's calls, she later discovers Nana has passed away. This happens after Mary embraces her abjection, marking the only moment she briefly cracks emotionally. Similarly, in Grafted, Way's aunt serves as both Angela's biological mother and Way's surrogate mother. When Way first arrives in New Zealand, her aunt notices her scar but doesn't comment on it, instead smiling and complimenting her scarf. Helter Skelter features my favorite mother role, with Limjoco playing both daughter and mother. Her manager is literally named Mama. Before analyzing these maternal dynamics further, I want to address the universally complicated mother-daughter relationship. Mothers often unintentionally project both dreams and insecurities onto their daughters. In Helter Skelter, Mama tells Lilico she is her dream that she created. During Mama's detective interrogation, he shows her a photo of her younger self. Lilico is her exact copy. Mama lives vicariously through Lilico. The same dynamic exists between Elizabeth and Sue. Despite knowing Sue is destroying her, Elizabeth hesitates to terminate her, calling Sue the only lovable part of her. Daughters, however, develop disconnection from their mothers as they mature, seeing them no longer as mothers but as women like themselves, often fearing they'll become them. Elliot M. Weber's paper Eye of the Beholder explains this contradiction. Women who reject the powers of men and authority aim to construct an identity which does not center on the ways in which their bodies can serve others, a direct resistance to the mother role. Within the household structure, a woman's first encounter with these roles is through their mother. They observe the way their mothers operate within the restrictive role of the housewife, confined to a very limited role which possesses virtually no power except in regards to them, their daughters. In their own attempts to escape powerlessness and reclaim agency, mothers exert the same patriarchal power over their daughters that were instituted onto them. This creates a generational cycle of compliance and resistance, where for adolescent girls, mothers are constant reminders of their future social roles as wives and mothers. Although they desire maternal love, they attempt to break the spell of motherhood, seeking alternate futures. We see this in Grafted, where Angela's complicated relationship with her divorced mother culminates when her mother professes love through a bathroom door, while Angela lies bloodied in the tub and Wei silently cries. This complex relationship stems from daughters feeling both pity and disdain for their mothers. The mother is no longer their childhood hero, but a woman like themselves. She feels deeply connected to her daughter, attempting to relive girlhood through her, yet fails to reconnect with her womanhood and becomes merely a mother rejected by her daughter. The nurturing figure transforms into a controlling force monitoring her daughter's body and life, shaping it to fit her ideals. In a society limiting women's power to domestic service, mothers reclaim control by wielding the very patriarchal systems that confine them. Some even degrade themselves for male approval, like Elsa whipping herself for Gracian's validation and sacrificing Valerie's inheritance to regain youth, desperately seeking to relive girlhood by stripping Valerie's rights and vampirically draining Hedvika's vitality. In Helter Skelter, Lilico reunites with her younger sister Shikako, who idolizes her despite Lilico's hints of life dissatisfaction. Lilico maintains a normalized facade rather than revealing her abject nature to protect Chikako and preserve her happiness, much like mothers shielding daughters from Word's harsh realities. Eventually, these sheltered girls become women suddenly confronting life's horrors, feeling their otherness emerge, feeling betrayed. They resist their mothers, the ultimate abject bodies that nurtured but failed to protect them indefinitely. Weber's analysis of Junji Ito's Tomie stories provides perfect illustrations of these dynamics. In Adopted Daughter, Tomie plays the daughter role while she portrays the mother role in Littlefinger. Tomie, icon and Junji Ito's creation, embodies all femininity forms, an immortal, vengeful femme fatale with seductive power, driving men to insanity and violence, often resulting in her body's mutilation, somewhat similar to Elaine's love magic effects in The Love Witch. In Adopted Daughter, an old childless couple adopts Tomie. The adoptive mother's inability to bear children renders her monstrous. It's unnatural for a woman not to be a mother, making her inhuman and other. Aware of this, her refusal to accept it further demonizes her. She relives girlhood through adopted girls, simultaneously projecting onto Tomie and envying her, dressing and styling Tomie while attempting to bite her to extract youth, mirroring Elsa's actions in Valerie. There is a pattern here, you literally cannot escape the shiny blood-draining garlic haters. Littlefinger casts Tomie as mother, Married to an old man with sons her age, she plays both mother and woman, objectified by the men. Her caregiving role carries the unspoken demand that she submit to objectification disguised as duty. This service role can employ various forms of violence to maintain power and control. Told entirely through Hiroya's narration, the family outcast, Ito shows how Tomie in the mother role cannot speak for herself. We only know her through male interpretation. When she performs her maternal role while ignoring the sons, they label her a gold digger, and after the father's death, they debate who should take her next, reducing her to transferable property, a decor, a shiny trophy to flaunt. The maternal figure thus embodies both power and vulnerability, creation and horror. A mother's body is simultaneously sacred and abject, nurturing life while marked monstrous in its deviation from masculine norms. This tension between motherhood's veneration and the fear it provokes reveals broader cultural anxieties about female power. A power that, despite containment attempts within patriarchal structures, remains fundamentally uncontrollable. This ungovernable feminine power manifests through horror cinema, challenging traditional gender roles while reinforcing the association between femininity and monstrosity. The transformation from woman to monster follows different paths in each film, but they all share a common thread. A moment when abjection can no longer be denied, when otherness becomes too powerful to suppress. What unites these stories is how they portray monstrosity not as something external to womanhood, but as an inherent potential within it. When society treats the female body as abject, when it fears menstruation, pregnancy, aging, and female sexuality, it creates the conditions for monstrosity to emerge. These women don't become monsters because they are inherently evil. They become monsters because they've been treated as such, or because embracing monstrosity is their only path to agency in a world that denies them power. Each character's transformation represents a different aspect of feminine abjection. Mary's through violation and revenge, Way's through otherness and assimilation, Lilico's through artificial beauty and decay, Elizabeth's through Asian and jealousy, and Valerie's through sexual awakening and the gaze of others. Their bodies become battlegrounds where societal expectations wage war against their own desires and needs. The transformation from woman to monster isn't just a horror trope, it's a reflection of how society views women who refuse to conform, who embrace their abjection rather than hide it. By studying these monstrous women, we gain insight not just into cinematic portrayals of feminine horror, but into the very real horrors that women face in a world that simultaneously fetishizes and fears their bodies. My relationship with my female body is complicated. A friend of mine asked me a few weeks ago, what does it mean to be a woman? And it got me thinking. I love my femininity. I love makeup. I love dressing prettily and running fields in a princessy dress. But at the same time, my femininity is also the rage and intense emotions I feel daily. My body is a sanctuary, but it's also treacherous. It has a mind of its own, controlling how I feel and how I move. While writing this essay, I was listening to a fantasy Spotify playlist I made for myself, featuring artists like Florence and the Machine, Mitski, and Aurora, and while it kept playing, some similar songs played, including Paris Paloma's Labor, which is fitting. Female rage has been an online topic for a while now on this digital space. The fight between two others, man and woman, that fail to see the horrors each of them face with their own bodies. I can only speak for myself as a woman. I'm sure men go through similar horror with their bodies and the expectations of society around them, but it is fairly rare to find a piece of media that makes of the male body as it is an object of horror without having to borrow from metamorphosis or mutilation. Men face a different kind of monstrosity. The moment they embrace anything remotely feminine, society shuns them, tears them apart. Things like crying or expressing emotions are considered considered weaknesses, feminine traits that need to be suppressed. It's so weird how femininity is demonized in all its forms, even for men who choose to embrace it. When we were kids, these distinctions didn't matter. Boys could cry and girls could be rough, but then society stepped in and told us what monsters would become if we dared to cross these invisible lines. The feminine in body horror is a scream at the patriarchal norms society enforces on women. A woman's identity is only tied to her proximity with others, whether it's a mother, daughter, or a courteous object. From a young age, she is told to obey and smile, because pretty girls smile, stripping her from her agency and her power to say no and go against men, because that's what makes her evil. That's what makes her unapproachable and scary. The I'm just a girl trend that was popular a few years ago, I don't even know what time is anymore, is a direct response to the boys will be boys discourse, where men and women excuse men's behavior just because they're men. It is ironic how the song used for this trend, Just a Girl by No Doubt, includes lyrics such as I'm just a girl living in captivity, and I'm just a girl in the world, that's all you'll ever let me be. Criticizing how society can accept a stereotypical girl who loves ribbons and pink, but should never be anything more than just a pretty thing to look at. Throughout this essay, we've explored how female monstrosity in cinema reveals deeper truth about society's relationship with women's bodies. From Lilico's decay in artificial beauty to Mary's transformation into an avenging surgeon, these characters reflect our collective anxieties about femininity that refuses to conform. When women embrace their abject nature, their bodily functions, their Asian, their desires, they become monstrous in the eyes of a society that demands they remain beautiful, silent, and compliant. Yet there's power in this monstrosity. By understanding how these female monsters are constructed on screen, we can begin to deconstruct the real-world systems that label women as other. The monstrous feminine isn't just a horror trope. It's a mirror reflecting our cultural fears about female power and autonomy. Perhaps by facing these cinematic monsters, we can start to dismantle the real monsters of misogyny and objectification that continue to haunt our everyday lives. In embracing the horror of our own bodies, their messiness, their unpredictability, their refusal to conform, we might find not just acceptance, but liberation. The women in these films may be monsters, but in their monstrosity, they find a voice that patriarchy tried to silence. And in studying them, perhaps we too can find the courage to be a little more monstrous, a little more ourselves.